In today's capsule, I'd like to touch on the vaccination efforts. The past one we just had last weekend. I wanted to also take this opportunity to explain a little bit on what I've come to understand about the virus itself and the vaccine and how that works. It was broken down in pretty simple terms that I've come to understand fairly well. And this is why I had no objection, no fear to taking the vaccine last Friday. I'll start with the vaccine, with the virus itself. Most of you have seen the pictures of the virus, right? It's got all these little spikes on it. Well, what happens is when you get exposed to COVID-19, you could get let's say, 50 million viruses invading your body at once. Now, each virus attaches to a cell in your body using those spikes. And then it injects your cell with its own DNA and using your cell like an incubation sac, where eventually the virus grows within that cell and produces many, like a little spider, an egg sac. And once that cell reaches a certain point and it's too full of viruses that have replicated in that cell, this cell explodes, exposing the rest of your cells, and the process continues until you wind up on a respirator in a hospital. So the mRNA, you see your immune system, your cells, get these signals from the immune system to create a response to any given infection. So what the virus, knowing that it has all these little spikes on it, your body right now does not recognize it. So at the onset of the infection, your system is bombarded, let's say, with 50 to 100 million of these viruses with these little spikes. They attach to 50 to 100 million cells. The cells don't have any response to this. They don't know what it is. So what the vaccine does is that it creates the signal to your cells to create just that spike, the spike on the virus, and reconstruct it within the cell and destroy it. So now, when you first get infected, you're exposed to COVID-19, your system is going to recognize only that spike, and they'll say, this does not belong here, and they will kill it. Now, the vaccine itself doesn't contain anything of the virus at all. It does not replicate the virus, only the spike to allow your system to recognize and kill it as soon as it comes into your body. So the implications, scientific and medical implications for the future on this could be used for malaria. They're even talking about the common cold could be used to be fought with this technology. And it's not new. This has been going on since the late 1700s with smallpox. And the mRNA, from what I've read, is that as far back as 1990, they discovered this and started working on it. So they've built on the science over decades. And this virus, as deadly and as tragic as it's been, has pushed the scientific envelope to look at what they've already worked on for decades and developed this vaccine. So for those who think it's going to change their DNA, it can't. All it's going to do is it's going to give your cells the blueprints to create that spike and kill it. So you get 50 million viruses coming in. Over 1 billion cells are going to attack those 50 million and kill it before you even get sick. That's why it's important for every one of us to consider, at least look at the information that's out there. There are many websites. If you're depending on Facebook or any social media for your information, you're putting your health at risk, because there's a lot of disinformation, a lot of personal agendas out there that really would like nothing better than to watch all of us get sick and die. I'm sorry, but it's a very poor substitute for actual information and based on scientific fact. So please, we'll put up some websites, some links for you to get your own information. Don't just take my word for it. Read what I've been reading and come up with your own conclusion. And I think you're going to be really surprised about what they came up with the science, what they worked on is incredible. So this whole pandemic forced the scientific community to push its knowledge, to test and really develop. And this, I think it's an amazing time. And we're going to see incredible breakthroughs thanks to this development of this vaccine that could be applied to just about anything. Imagine if they could use this type of science and use it so that your body can recognize cancer cells and kill it using this same technique. So don't just take my word for it. Please go out and do your own research. So the vaccination that we had last Friday, I have to mention that we only had 36-hour notice to get this whole thing up and running. So we already had some information on our most vulnerable, our elders with underlying conditions, and others within our population that would be more a higher priority right now to get this vaccine. So while working with the rollout on the mass vaccination, it gave us a bit of a trial run so that we know how to manage the mass vaccination that's coming around mid-March. We've been assured by the Health Commission of the Lower Laurentians that there is going to be a much larger supply coming. The next one will be Moderna. The last one was Pfizer. That one's a little more complicated to preserve and transport. But the Moderna is coming, which will be easier to manage. And later on, there's the Johnson & Johnson, which is one shot and is very effective to the more serious strains that are coming up with this COVID-19. So the fact, I think, as soon as people, the best possible defense that you have is information. And you need to get the right information. This pandemic can't continue to spread. This virus has to be stopped. So far, we've been lucky in Kanesatake. We've kept our infection rate down to, I believe it was 22 out of 1,600 people in the last year. I think we've done pretty well. We've escaped the worst of it so far, but we can't depend on the fact that we're going to be that lucky indefinitely. So far, we've done fairly well. So the importance of getting the vaccine, you look at the statistics. Some people are worrying that the vaccine will create anaphylactic shock or some other problems. But so far, there have been very little of that. I think it was the statistics were 4 may get anaphylactic shock out of 1 million people vaccinated. So far, 300 million people around the world have been vaccinated, 400,000 here in Quebec alone. And so far, no reports within Quebec have surfaced about anybody getting sick. They say that some of the side effects you might get is a bit of a fever, some aches and pains, sore arm. Like I said earlier, myself, all I got was a bit of a sore arm for a couple of days. When it comes to your odds with COVID, it's 1 in 25 that you may die from the virus. Okay, the odds are pretty clear there. Now, if you don't die from the virus, there's long-term problems, lung damage, brain damage. You might wind up months not being able to breathe properly. There's all kinds of other things we just don't quite understand yet, but how long the effects of the virus might be. So the risks to your health not taking it are much higher than the benefits of getting the vaccine or the risks of getting the vaccine. So I would consider that before throwing that option out the window of not getting any vaccine. You take, for example, Right now, in the past year, we've been fairly lucky. We've had 22 infections out of 1,600 people on our territory. Now, it's not to say that they got infected and they just walked away and they were fine, because some of them were not. As a matter of fact, we lost one to COVID, and there is one case, a reported case, that is worrying me considerably about the outcome of this member. And the long-term effects on the others who've been recently infected is also a cause for worry. So you got to take that into consideration. The risks involved are going to be around for at least another year, even after vaccination. And it all depends on how many of us go out and get the vaccine. But first, get the right information. Because it really is a matter of not only your individual health, but the community's health as a whole, and whether we get back to some form of normal life, or do we keep dragging this out for an undetermined amount of time. So please get the information. That's your best weapon against this. Get informed. So I'm expecting everybody get the right information from the right sources. Don't depend on Facebook. It's all a lot of disinformation. Your very health, your life could depend on it. So I appreciate your attention on this capsule, and looking forward to the next one. Niawenhkó.